You're good. Don't worry about it.
If the cat's coming
Hey,
in, so
welcome
eating.
everybody. It is episode 12 of the Justin and
Caitlin show.
Hey. Today's chat is on the Avoidant Attachment style. Welcome to our attachment series, by the way. This is the third episode in a series of 5. If you want to recap, our first episode on this was episode 10 on attachment theory and the general styles. Last week we talked about ambivalence, and tonight is avoidant. So some basic housekeeping type stuff. If you watched last week and you tuned in this week, thank you for doing so.
Thank you.
Feel free to share our material. That's awesome. But also, if you recognize that you're like, wow, the ambivalent and avoidant stuff is somewhat similar, it's okay. They're kind of a pretty normal combination. I call it a combo platter because I wrote my notes when I was hungry today. And but just know that they do play together a little bit and off each other at times. So if you notice, wow, I feel like I'm both. Usually there's still the primary, but if you're an Enneagram person, it's almost like having a wing. You know, I'm primarily ambivalent, but I've got a wing of avoidance. Or it could be opposite. This also has a heads up. You extroverted folk out there, this is not the time to go run into your friend's house, knocking on their door who might be introverted, and go, hey, I know your issue now. It's your attachment style. Come out and hang out more. No, that's extroversion, introversion. That is not what we're getting at here with avoidant attachment style, okay? So I'm trying to help and save all of you out there who are introverts.
Thank you.
Actually, I'm probably more introverted too myself. But also, as another heads up to you parents, I said this last week, these attachment series episodes can potentially, and I'll be honest, likely to be a double whammy effect because you may attach, ironically, to a certain style, and then you're going to have an aha moment of, oh boy, I've passed on my avoidant style to little Johnny or little Sally. And so you do kind of tend to deal with a double effect. It's okay. Come to therapy. We will help you work through that. At the end of today's episode, too, we're going to end a little bit differently. And we're going to talk about a little bit of addiction stuff and some differences on how Caitlin and I conceptualize that. And guess what? It's okay to be different. So let's get ripping here. Caitlin, why don't you introduce us to some core fears and basic beliefs as somebody who's got an avoidant attachment.
So yeah, if we use the same 2 questions from last week. So the 2 attachment questions. 1, do I believe I'm worthy of love? And 2, do I trust others to do that, to love me? Avoidant is actually the reverse of ambivalent. So avoidant, the first answer is yes. They do believe that they're worthy of love. Everything that happened in their childhood, it wasn't internalized, it was externalized. Where at the end of the day, yeah, they believe they're worthy of love. That's okay. The catch here is they do not trust anyone else around them to love them or meet their needs. And this is something Justin's going to dive into when he talks about how this attachment style formed, which is needs were seen as weaknesses. They were not allowed to be injured. They were not allowed to need something, even if it was a glass of water. They had to figure out how to get that for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So they believe, yes, they can be loved, but there's something wrong with the people around them. There has to be. And playing off of that then, the core fear is intimacy. For them, it's not being abandoned. It is someone truly seeing them. And if you think about the word intimacy, into me, I see. So someone truly seeing them for them and having that vulnerable emotional connection. That is the big, big core fear there. So Justin, why don't you kind of take us back to childhood and talk about how this wonderful attachment style
jump formed on the Edric school bus here and take us back.
Yes, there you go.
Jump in a DeLorean here. So again, if you're a parent and you hear me or Caitlin talk about these things, the efforts here are not to condemn you as a parent. Parents, The point is just to show, we all mess up here. We as counselors have jokes that we set up college funds for our kids, but also therapy funds. Because guess what? Even though we teach this stuff, we know we're going to mess things up as well. So this isn't a, let's put you on a bunch of fire coals and light you up. But here's how this whole avoidant attachment style can form, right? So we're a baby. Could be 6 days, 6 months old. Mm-hmm. Babies cry. Babies' way of crying is their way of communicating. Obviously, they do not have the words yet to say, hey, mom, hey, dad, I would like an apple juice and that special sippy cup with the cool top. So what they do instead is they cry. Mm-hmm. Now, as a mom and dad, when you're attuned, you start realizing the cries have different sounds involved when they've wet themselves from peeing, they've pooped, they're hungry, they need to be burped, they just want to get out, be kind of held and moved around a bit. These have different sounds. However, if you're a parent and you're struggling with, quite honestly, an addiction, like you have alcohol or alcoholic, you're really depressed, you're really anxious, you have some legitimate major issues going on, you do not have the emotional energy because so much is wrapped in your day-to-day existence. You don't have anything remaining, or what you have remaining is very little to give to little Johnny or little Sally. So what tends to happen is you may hear your baby cry and you may reluctantly go over there. Now, you may remember a few weeks ago, Caitlin shared, babies check this whole area. This is where they are inferring and getting all their information. I don't want to say your words are irrelevant because that's not true, but right here is really their communication. So you may reluctantly come over and be like, I'm so happy to change you again. But they see this. They see the wrinkles. They see the irritation. They start thinking that, and this stuff's happening, man, and subconscious. It's not in the front of the baby's head. This person doesn't seem to want to care for me. I don't know if I'm going to be able to trust them to take care of my needs down the road. This is how early these things form. Okay? Now, again, for a baby, this is so subconscious and deep in the brain. This is not a frontal thought. Mm-hmm. Again, a big parenting style that was like a firestorm across the Christian community and even the culture at large was this whole idea of structuring, kind of letting your baby cry, and that let them cry it out, or have a structure. You're going to change Johnny's diaper at 2 and 3:15 and then 4:45. And if he starts crying at 1:45, well, buddy, you're going to have to wait till 2 because that's how this works and I'm in charge. Well, think about that for a baby, man, who's got a wet diaper or they poop themselves or both. Mm-hmm. And now I'm sitting in this for 15 minutes. Now, for a baby, that's a long time. They've only been alive for a few days. So 15 minutes is a large portion of their existence thus far. Yeah. For us, you're like, oh, that's chump change, But again, think and frame this around the idea of a baby and their existence and what they have experienced thus far. Again, this isn't to condemn you, or that parenting style came out with some questionable research and it was found later to not be obviously the most effective strategy, but you go with what you're told at times and you think you're being helpful. Again, Caitlin referenced this, the idea where your parents literally say, or at least give off the impression that emotions are weak. Mm-hmm. Don't care. I don't want to hear that you're having a bad day. Smile. Get over it. The child starts learning, my emotions and thoughts don't matter. Yep. So I'm going to stuff them all down. Now, in therapy, as a counselor, we would call this separating from the self, which is our internal. A lot of people now talk about, like, I want to self-actualize. I want to be fully me. Mm-hmm. Well, this is where the becoming fully me journey became tough, was when you're 3 months old, now to whatever you are today. Because these things were rejected and not accepted, we create an adaptive self. And Caitlin's going to talk about this in a little bit with the idea of narcissist perfectionism and different stuff that comes out of this adaptive self. But again, it comes from this area that my emotions and my thoughts are rejected. They're not accepted. They're not, quite honestly, allowed. And again, this is coming from the place where the parents just don't have the emotional energy to engage you and attune to that kind of level because they had whatever going on. And at some point, the kid gets the message that it is too painful, it is too much hurt for me to keep putting myself out there to just get rejected and shut down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to build armor around my heart so that you can't get to it and I'm not going to get hurt again. And this is how that avoidant attachment style occurs. Because a lot of people will be like, wow, that person is so cool, but they just don't seem to want to let me in. You know, there's literally a blockade, and there is. They have fortified their heart because they have been hurt.
Yep.
A lot of times, kids need touch every day. I don't know exactly the book we're reading that says 11, but I think that's actually more now. But however many touches, and we're talking safe, good touch here, Kids need that. It's very important. When we don't get that, if you think and you're like, wow, I don't even remember my dad or my mom both hugging me. I don't remember them putting an arm over my shoulder saying, hey, it's going to be okay. You're just okay. Touch becomes unwanted then as an adult. Touch becomes like this unsafe thing because I haven't experienced it. So remember, as a baby, the things that I'm seeing and experiencing, whether they're dysfunctional or not, is going to become my norm. I'm literally the computer. What I'm observing becomes the software writing. This is the norm. This is how we work. So if your family wasn't touchy and they're kind of offset with that, but you go out and you start dating and someone's trying to touch you, there's a party that's like, oh, this is pretty cool. But now there's also a party going, no, warning bells. This is, I don't want this. This also is a good precursor, and I'm not saying that only avoidant attachment style people deal with this. I'm not saying that. But there's a big percentage that deal with porn. Because if my fear, my core fear, like Caitlin said, is intimacy, and sex is the most intimate way for a couple to communicate and connect, I'm not going there. But I still want to get off. So I will watch porn, and it acts as that intermediary. I can still masturbate and ejaculate an orgasm, get what I feel is a similar outcome, but I don't have to risk the vulnerability.
Exactly.
So, Caitlin, why don't you carry us into the beginning parts here? What's it look like?
I'd say that's a really good transition because as adults, this is something that a lot of us deal with, either if we struggle with the avoidant attachment or if our significant other does. It's how do we navigate that? And we'll jump into, again, the addiction stuff later. And Justin and I do plan on doing a whole talk just on sex and how attachment actually plays into this. Because it sometimes does feel like you're walking into fire to have these hard conversations. And how do you then heal from an avoidant or ambivalent or disorganized attachment to having sex with secure attachment? What does that even look like when we haven't experienced it? Or when you haven't experienced the secure attachment? So we'll dive into that in a few weeks. Everyone stay tuned. But one big common denominator with everyone that struggles with avoidant attachment is that there is a difficulty with connecting emotionally and being vulnerable. Again, from a young age, any sort of need, even if it was like, I need food, I need help doing something, I need water, was seen as a weakness. You were expected to figure out on your own. And so any needs, any hard emotions, we're just kind of told, okay, you just need to shove them down. Keep shoving, keep shoving, keep shoving. Now here's the issue. We can only keep shoving for so long. So here's what happens. All of those emotions, all of that pent up frustration, resentment, anger, sadness, fear, it'll either end up exploding onto every single person around us. So we'll be good for a while, and then we'll just explode. And we just say, I have an anger issue, it's whatever. But it's because we don't know how to express those emotions because we were never taught. Or we end up imploding, which means we keep stuffing. And it actually ends up affecting our bodies.
Mm-hmm.
I went to a conference last year, and I know I mentioned this in one of my Facebook Lives, and something they told us was when we keep stuffing, the burial ground is our body. And as counselors, we see this all the time where people come in and they do have chronic pain. Yeah. They're dying. Mm-hmm. They're dying 20, 30, 40 years sooner than what they could. Either from dementia, Alzheimer's, diabetes, cancer. Something is going on in their bodies, and their body is just, it's done. And when you look in their past, a lot of times you'll see this pattern where they were told, okay, you can't have a need. You can't be vulnerable. You can't express those emotions. So they just pushed it down because that's what they had to do to survive. Mm-hmm. And now that survival technique is literally killing them because it only lasted for so long. Our bodies can only take so much. And so understanding that, and that's one reason we wanted to talk about, how do these attachment styles form? Because now when we really see what it looks like on a day-to-day basis, it's very easy to get aggravated. It's very easy to look at someone, let's say, the first way that avoidant attachment might look is being a narcissist or having narcissistic tendencies. Mm-hmm. It's the person when they come in, they have to feel superior to everyone else in the room. They have to be better. And again, it's a survival thing. They have to be better because they have to meet their own needs. They've been taught they can't rely on anyone else in the room. Right. They have to be able to meet every single one of their own needs in order to survive. So they are not vulnerable. They have really struggled with receiving any sort of feedback or criticism on their performance. They really struggle with being open or honest about something. They will name drop a lot as well, talk a lot about their accomplishments. And so for the people that don't struggle with avoidant attachment and they're looking at this, it's easy to get aggravated. It's easy to see that, and whether it's a narcissistic personality disorder or if the person just has narcissistic tendencies, it can be a struggle. But when you understand how it's formed, mm-hmm. it makes all the sense in the world why that's there. And then for people that do struggle with this, and for the ones that are listening and you're like, hey, you know what, that does sound like me. I really do feel like I have to be better. I focus a lot of time on talking badly about others or bringing them down so I can feel like I'm kind of like a level above them. This is a great opportunity to start looking at, okay, how did this heal? How did this form? And then how do you heal from that? Where do you go from there? And the second way when the avoidant style will show is through perfectionism. It's through that need. Again, everything's based on performance. Has to be perfect. Mm-hmm. They have to have 100% control. When they don't have control, depression can form. Anxiety can form. Absolute full-on fear. But again, they have to be able to supply for all their own needs. It is based in that they have to be able to survive. And so when you see both of these as adults now, for those of you listening that you're like, wow, I feel like I actually fit into some of this. I encourage you guys, I know Justin does too, like come to therapy. It doesn't have to be with us, but just have someone that you can share your story with to start identifying these patterns. So that way you can heal and actually live a life that you don't feel like you're a victim to your past. You don't feel like, okay, well, avoidant attachment, I guess there's nothing I can do. No, there's a lot you can do. There's a lot where we can go from here. You can actually have fulfilling relationships. You can actually live the future you want to live and not feel like your past is going to define that for you. But that means you have to be willing to face these areas and really look at them and say, crap, that's me. I don't want that anymore. Yes, I've survived doing this so far, but how can I get a new survival technique? How can we start thriving instead of surviving? What does that look like? And so I know, Justin, you were actually going to use some examples of things that you've seen in your past where this is played in, kind of make it a little more real for everyone.
Yeah, I think story is important. I think story people connect to, but I think we need sometimes to have framework and a baseline, like you said, of how it works.
Yeah.
And here's a story. And guess what? That's mine. I would say my dad's primary attachment style is avoidant. Mom most likely ambivalent. So remember me as a baby, a young kid, childhood, adolescence, all that. This is my environment. This is my framework that gets created. Again, to Caitlin's point, healing is possible. Shoot, I'm married now. There's a point in my life I didn't think that was ever possible. Okay, so here's a few stories for you. Remember, what you observe is what you take in as normal and how you interact. So when DirecTV, came out, my dad always had satellite dishes. Even when we had like the giant 8 to 10 foot one in the backyard, looked like it communicated with aliens. He had that thing, and then when DirecTV came out, the little guy that everybody has now, it's like, so he ordered it. And when the DirecTV guy showed up, those of you who've had Eddie's cable and whoever people come, they usually come in their van, come in your house, they might have to drill a wall, run some wires, connect stuff, and it's pretty easy breezy. My dad met this man in our driveway, walked out to his van, grabbed all the stuff from him and told him to leave. He would not let him come in the house. He would not accept the help. He did not want him to come do anything. He did not want him on the roof drilling any holes. He wanted nothing. He said, he literally told him, go take a long lunch break. I don't care, but you're not installing this. I'll take care of it. And that's how that non-reliance on others, I don't believe you're actually going to come through. I don't believe you are reliable. I know that I can do this. Now, my dad's very handy. He built our house. So, yeah, obviously he can do it. But it's the point of whatever age my dad was at that time, 50, let's say. Do you really want to be 50 years old and unnecessarily crawling up on the roof? You can fall off a roof really easily. Do you need to risk that? But again, it's that I don't believe you are reliable or dependable to do a good job. It's on me. So, enter me in preschool. In my preschool, I have a few memories. One of them is we had this shoe, and it had laces, and it was what we used to practice tying a shoe. Now, the first time I went, when I pulled the loops, the one lace was too short, so I only had one loop and then like a string. And my teacher at the time said, okay, Justin, come on, let me show you how to do this. And I said, no. Now, mind you, I'm like 4 years old or something, whatever preschool is, 4. I was like, no. And I gave her the hand. I undid the shoe, and I retied it and did it right. And I said, there you go. I didn't want her help. I didn't want her input. Let's fast forward a bunch of years, right? Let's show you how this can look as far as kind of a really overt and tough way of what parents can be when they got no emotional space to engage you. I was about probably 19, 20 years old. I was playing football with some friends, some rough touch footballs around Thanksgiving time, not necessarily Thanksgiving, but in that time frame in New Jersey, November. A bunch of us was playing. On the first play of the game, I was defense. I was covering a dude playing receiver. The ball got thrown to him. When I jumped up, knocked the ball away, I landed weird. I ended up separating my shoulder. Now, one of the messages I got, and we talked about earlier, where your emotions, your thoughts and feelings don't matter. It's that suck it up mentality. Get over it. I was basically taught to ignore pain. And that injuries didn't matter. You just duct tape it and figure it out. My right arm, literally, I couldn't move it up. And I, being taught to ignore pain, and that didn't matter. I could ignore my body. I played for another 3 hours like this. My buddy Will drives me home. I get home. Obviously, at this point, it's throbbing and hurts like hell. I get in the shower. I can't even pick my arm up to like get the soap bar, and put in a washcloth, whatever. Shower off. Tell my parents, hey, something's wrong with my shoulder. I need to go to the ER. I need to go to the hospital. My dad said, yeah, you want to play? You got to pay. And my mom said, well, you go take yourself. And I don't remember if they had somewhere they were already going or whatever, but they literally wouldn't drive me to the hospital. So I had to call my friend Will. Think about how embarrassing, talk about shame and things. I had to call my friend Will, I only live 7 minutes away, to come pick me up, to then drive me to the hospital, wait with me 3 hours, because anything in the hospital's not fast in the yard normally, especially this is 15 years ago, to get all my x-rays and all that. My buddy Will had to drive me. Think about the message that sends you as a kid or an adolescent. You, sir, are on your own. Figure it out. We don't care. There was a lot of times when I was in auto school, ironically, my car would break down. And I would be up till 1, 2, 2:30 in the morning fixing it so that I can get to auto school at 8:30 in the morning. And I'd be going to school still with my fingers greasy, covered in oil and all kinds of junk, and I never got help. Now, my dad works on cars. I may or may not have wanted his help. But the point is, it was very evident you are on your own. There may be only twice in my whole life, I'm 34, maybe twice in my whole life I feel like my dad asked for help. And one of them was a horrific outcome. And so I share all this not to be a woe is Justin moment, but to just show you that, look, when we tell you that these messages come and they are learned from your parents and the environment around you, it's true. And that's where that combination can also form of avoidant and ambivalent, where my mom ambivalent, and my dad was avoidant. And so you learn both of those styles, and they mix in their own different ways. Everybody's a little different, but that's how they can come together. Now, some of you might be thinking, well, why did you reference addiction earlier? And we talked about it in one of our previous episodes, I think the first week of this attachment series, actually. But we both conceptualize addiction through attachment, but we do it in a little different way.
Yeah.
So, Caitlin, since I've been running my gums here for 5 minutes, why don't you lead in? And
Yeah. So how I view addiction, and this has been through either my own personal story and then also research I've done, is addiction is a relationship. And I think both Justin and I do agree on that aspect of it. We just view it a little bit differently. I view the addiction as the actual relationship, where when you look at someone's past, there's usually a pattern where people have not been consistent and relationships have not been safe. So the addiction actually becomes something they connect to. We are wired for connection. Does not matter if we don't want it. It's how our brain is wired. You will connect to something. It'll either be people or it will be something else. And the something else is where addictions can form. And so when I'm seeing someone, like my own addiction to alcohol, for years I struggled with that. And it was because for me, alcohol was a safer thing to attach to and a safer thing to go to at the end of every stressful day than a person was. That was literally a safer relationship for me than reaching out for connection with a human being. And so when I counsel people or when I talk to someone about their story, that is definitely a pattern that I've seen where the addictions are there. And there's also a lot of pain in relationships where the relationships, again, haven't been safe. And the addiction has almost stepped in as this pseudo type of relationship that where needs are trying to be fulfilled. But unfortunately, the addiction is still not fulfilling the needs because it's not an actual healthy, safe relationship. And ironically, that kind of ties into how Justin views it with where he focuses with this process.
Yeah. And, where Caitlin's conceptualization, again, this isn't a right, wrong thing. Mm-hmm. It just is. It's almost the addiction is an offshoot because of the addiction. All these A words today. The offshoot of the attachment style or the avoidant attachment style is the addiction. I want to avoid connection, but I want connection, and I can connect to your point, a bottle or whatever. Whereas I see the addiction as the relationship. This bottle, whiskey, vodka, rum, whatever, this is the relationship. Mm-hmm. I observe as a counselor how you interact with the other. That can be literally an other person or this object. Because think about how safe this can feel, because I am in charge of going to, what, ABC Liquors. I pick out the bottle. I pay. I pour you in the glass with the ice and the mixer or whatever you do. I am in charge. I am in control, and that makes me feel safe. But you're reliable and you're consistent. You always taste the same. You're always on the shelf in the same place. You're always, quote unquote, there for me. And I engage and watch how the relational dynamic, where I see a lot of addiction as being ambivalent, watching people want to push it away, going, I don't want to drink anymore or smoke weed or whatever the addiction. I don't want to do this anymore, and we quit. And then we're back and we're smoking like a chimney. And we're like, oh man, how did I get here? I need to get this. And it's that push-pull effect. I want to go. And you watch this a lot with addictions. It's just sad, and it is a hard road, man. But it's that whole, I'm clean, I slipped. Clean, I slipped. But again, it's seeing this as a both and. Caitlin is not wrong. I am not right. I'm not wrong. Caitlin is not right. It's they're both, first off, cool. They're both okay. And one of my struggles in this field at times, and this isn't a helping profession in general, I've observed this a lot in the medical profession. We tend to tear each other down when we really need to be bringing each other up. Just because somebody conceptualizes something differently or they put it in a different frame doesn't mean they need to be ridiculed. It's okay. Caitlin and I work together. We're in the same practice. We went to school together. We graduated together. We're working together. She conceptualizes literally it's the slightest bit different. And guess what? That's okay. Guess what? That's cool. Because at the end of the day, it's, can you make it work so that it's helpful to the client and it's healing to them?
Yep. At the end of the day, it's not about us. It's about who walks in the room and how they conceptualize it. If I am focused on only explaining it my way, but turns out looking at how they actually engage the addiction is where they need to heal, then it's my job as a therapist to be able to go there with them. And that's something I love about what we do, is we do challenge each other to do that. It's like, have you thought about it this way? Well, have you seen a different way of viewing it? So
cool.
Nice and lighthearted for you tonight, guys.
Yeah, that's right. It's good.
Yeah.
So that concludes episode 12 of the Justin and
Caitlin show. Stay tuned for Disorganized Attachment. Woo. This one's going to be rough, guys. Yeah, you thought these two were rough.
Next week, I would say it's more sad than rough.
Yeah.
And after that, though, the next week after is on earned secure attachment / secure attachment. So those of you who have connected to either the past two shows and have been, I'm ambivalent, I'm avoidant. Maybe next week you're like, I'm disorganized. That last show is really going to be about some of the healing process. Again, in 30 minutes, we're not going to cover how to heal a lifetime of attachment stuff. That's what therapy's for. But if you're looking for some answers on how the journey looks, how you create these secure attachments and a foundation, that'll be in 2 weeks. And then we may follow it up with a bonus week on sex and attachment. We'll see. But that concludes this week, and we'll see y'all next Wednesday at 7:30.
Bye, everyone.
See ya.